Hi everyone, welcome back to the Art of Save Scumming. Today we're gonna do another Total War Warhammer 3 basics guide. In my last episode, I did a basics guide for how to play Total War Warhammer 3. Just if you're a new player, getting started, what do you need to know? And to do that, I used the High Elves because they're a pretty basic faction. Well, several of you asked if I would do one specifically for the Skaven because there's a lot to do in the Skaven campaigns. Anybody who's followed the channel for any amount of time will know that I am a Skaven fanboy. They're my favorite faction to play. So if I've got an excuse from the audience to make Skaven content, I'm going to. So what we've got here is a quick head taker campaign that I just started up to spool it up to the point where I can get a decent guide going, access the functionality, sort of stuff. And there's a couple things that you'll notice right off the bat that are different from a normal faction, and that is that we not only have our treasury, but we also have this bar up here, which is the food mechanic. All the Skaven have access to the food mechanic, and it can be simultaneously a very powerful mechanic and a huge detriment to you if you're not managing it properly. So how this works is you have a certain denomination of food. You have a cap on how high you can go. Currently, I can have a total of 155 food. And if I am at the 41 to 60% level, then I get a +3 growth bonus, but my buildings cost 10% more. If I drop below that and I'm somewhere between 21 and 40, you can see I get some negative impacts. These are pretty bad, but the worst one by far is that leadership -5 all armies, particularly if you're playing on heavier difficulties. This is going to definitely impact you on the battle map. If you start to go into starving for food, you can see that, again, pretty heavy debuffs there, but that -10 leadership all armies, your guys are going to make contact and they're going to run away immediately. So it's actually pretty difficult to take on any sizable force with a Skaven army that is starving for food. On the other side of it, if we go up to at 61 to 80, you can see that we get some good buffs, most notably that leadership +5, so we're going to last a lot longer. Then if you're plentiful food, 81 to 100, again, more buffs, as you can see. So that's the food mechanic in a nutshell. You gain food through a couple things. You have special buildings. Let me show you one. I got one up here at Carrick 8 Peaks. This one is going to produce 5 food per turn. And then if we go through its full capacity, it'll do 6 food per turn if I got it all the way upgraded. This building also produces food if you've got it, I think it's level 2. Yeah, produces 1 food. Yeah, 1 food every turn. So that one's also important because it's going to increase the percentage of your income by 40% across the entire province. So that's a pretty good one to target. Now you can only build that one at tier 3 and above. The Skaven are what is considered a grower faction, and that is that they don't really make a lot of money unless they've got complete provinces and they've built things in those provinces. So what I suggest that you do if you take a settlement is that you fill all the slots with something. So what I normally do is I will build this building, which is the Rattling Warrens, and the Rubbish Pit immediately. If I've got an open spot, I will build it. And the reason that is because if we were to, do I have an open space to build anything so I can see what the cost is? And I knew that I had one. I just couldn't find it because I'm an idiot. If you look at this, they both cost 225 in this province, but they are under the effects of expansionist planning, which is what I suggested you run if you're building up a province. If you're not concentrating on building up a province, then run the food production. What I will tell you to do most of the time is pick a province or 2 that you plan to spend money in consistently, put them under expansionist planning, and then turn the rest of them under this exploitative planning for food production. So anyway, if you build these 2 buildings, or one of them, build this building, it completes in a turn. If you allow it to give you money for a turn and then demolish it the next turn, if you were to demolish that building, let's find one that's built. Demolishing it would give you 150 gold. So I don't know about you, but my public education math tells me that if it produces 80, I get back 150, and it only cost me 225, then I made 5. So even if you end up destroying it, you're better off to produce the building, fill the slot, allow it to produce the money for a single turn, make it back, and then demolish it and fill it with something else when you have time. That it's if you don't have a plan. Because, again, it doesn't cost a whole lot to fill that slot, and it's producing money. Especially if you have this building sitting there, because now you're producing an extra 30%, 40%, or 50%. And if you look at the cost of what it would, like if you look at this one, it's producing actually 112. So the benefits of filling the slots definitely outweigh the rapid nature of filling the slots with the proper buildings, because it doesn't take very long to switch things around. Now, the next thing is you are the Skaven. Everybody hates your guts, so you have to do defense. So I do suggest that you build in every single settlement some kind of defensive structure. So, for instance, in the main province, we build this building chain. It produces money, but it also gives you access to Warp Bomb. Warp Bomb is an explosion technique that you use on your own units when they are substantially damaged. It will do pretty gratuitous damage to your enemies and really turn the tide of a battle in most cases. So at the main building chain, or excuse me, at the province capital, if you're all the way up, you get 3 uses of the Warp Bomb. So you get 1 use here, plus an additional one, plus an additional one. Now, if you're at a minor settlement, like, where are we at here? Here, let's do this one first, because it's not quite there yet. You'll notice that here, we do not get Warp Bomb here. At level 2 of this building, we do not get a Warp Bomb. But if we look down here at the Misty Mountain, we do get Warp Bomb. So you have to build to level the second tier, or the level 3 of this building, to get Warp Bomb. There are ways to use the Warp Bomb because, again, depending on how your food is situated, you may not be able to get a unit to stand there and fight to 50% of its health. So what I normally do, particularly is Queek, because Queek gets extra Menace Belows. Menace Belows are a summonable unit. You can summon it on the battlefield, allow it to get beat up, and then cast the Warp Bomb on it, and you did no damage to your army and only damage to theirs. Also, the Menace Below is not impacted by faction-wide effects like the food mechanic. So when they are summoned, you don't have to worry about these debuffs on those units. They're only on the army units. So that's a double-edged sword, is what I'm trying to say. This mechanic does not hurt you, but also none of the buffs from your army. For instance, if you were to run down this line, it summons clan rats. If you had this all the way up, those clan rats don't get that benefit. So just keeping that in mind. The next thing that I would point out is that the Skaven have a base stance of, where is it? Their base stance is stalking stance. And what this means is that there's a chance of ambushing an enemy when you force an attack. So when this army attacks the enemy, I have a chance of initiating a ambush battle, even though I was not in ambush stance. So they still get ambush stance, but just by the nature of attacking an army, I can initiate an ambush battle, which also goes up, if we look in here, Ancient Cunning, and it goes up 6%, and then it tops out at 30%. This basically means that 9 times out of 10, when you initiate a field battle on an enemy army, like this guy right here standing outside the settlement, I have an almost 100% chance when that's all the way upgraded, because I've got other buffs in here for ambush success chance for Queek as well. Yeah, ambush success chance plus 25%. So I think the base is like 40, 45 or something like that, plus 25, plus 30. Do the math. We're almost all the way there. So if I were to attack this army, not only will I ambush them, but I will also separate them from their reinforcements. So I don't really need, as the Skaven, the lightning strike. I put a point there to increase the amount of time their reinforcements take to get online, but You don't really need to go all the way because you almost never use it as the Skaven because you're always ambushing and separating from reinforcements by default. The rights for the Skaven are super powerful. Now they differ a little bit depending on who you're playing. This is what I'm going to say is the base set of rights. So this is going to be Queek. This is going to be Tretch. I think Ikit gets these as well, and so does Pestilence. Also Molder gets them, but Eshin does not. Eshin, excuse me, I think the 13 scheme is changed. No, okay, that's what it is. The 13th scheme changes the clan stone, and each clan stone has a different effect, basically. So this changes a little bit between clans. Everybody else gets the same thing, except for Eshin does not get the Scheme of Doom. So if we go through these really quick, if you look, this one you basically run all the time, and that gives you extra food, extra growth, control, and recruitment cost reduction. So you're just going to run this all the time. When you're not running it, every once in a while you're going to pop this thing, and this is going to give you a free Warlock Engineer that allows you to set up Undercities. So let's talk about Undercities for a minute, because these are like an add-on to what you're doing on the rest of the campaign map, and this thing is super overpowered. So if we look inside this Undercity here that I've got set up, first of all, it's got the Warlock Engineer building, research rate, hero capacity for Warlock Engineers, etc., etc. But if we look at the other things that we can build here, we can increase the amount of food that is produced. We have another food building that does this. We have buffs to movement range as well as replenishment and some other things. If we're trying to spread this Undercity, we can tunnel between settlements. So you can build this chain and it will give you a chance of spreading it each turn. This one, more research rate as well as upkeep reductions. This one, also income generated, construction cost reduction, increase from trade, gives you the warp bomb in whatever province it is, regardless if you own it or not. There's also money production. And then here's your hiding chain. So these are, each time you build one of these, you end up getting a discoverability factor. So discoverability plus 20, and that is denoted by this bar here. That building chain reduces them. So you have two different ones. One costs you money, right? Cost. This one does not, but it gives you, deletes your visibility. This one is the Vermintide. So this is going to destroy the Undercity, but it's going to spawn an army. And if you go to your tech tree, wrong button. You go to your tech tree, there's so much crap in here, but there's several instances where you get added units to your Vermintide. So you can go set up an Undercity and spawn an army, and armies can also spread Undercities. So instead of destroying it or occupying it, you have the opportunity to, once you defeat the battle there, you have the ability to spread an Undercity if you so choose. Now, these are not going to be your main priority, but you are going to prioritize these as one of the things that you're going to spend a fair amount of money on because they are such an added benefit. Now, if this settlement gets blown up, you lose your Undercity, so just throwing it out there. If this discoverability reaches 100, they'll find you and they have the choice of destroying the Undercity themselves. It costs them a fair chunk of money to do that. Now, how do you build your Undercities? What I typically do is I go hard for food. I'll also do something like what I've got going on here, maybe the next level up from this, to be able to maximize food, but also have this Warlock Engineer building there. I do not want these to be discovered because they are rare. You can only get them so many turns. So being able to maintain this building, I don't want this to be discovered. And I only put them in really secure locations. Then the other thing that I'll do is I'll build a spreader. So I'll find a good settlement to spread stuff to. A really good one if you're not going to operate in the region. So if you're playing as, particularly when I'm playing as Molder all the way up here, I'll send a Warlock Engineer all the way down to Morgheim. Because if you look at Morgheim, it's surrounded by this settlement, then Bitterstone Mine, followed by Crooked Fang Fort, followed by Carrick Asgal. It's bordered by the Floating Village. It's also bordered by the Sunken, whatever that word is. And then I think Galbaraz, Dragonborn Mines, excuse me. So all of those have the capacity to spread. So off of a single undercity here with a spreader building, we can spread all those around, and then from there I can start building up whatever it is that I want to accomplish with my undercities, whether it's padding my money or padding my food. The last thing I want to talk about today is Skaven corruption, because it's a weird one. So every other faction that spreads corruption only positively benefits from spreading their own corruption. Skaven, by contrast, actually are positively and negatively impacted by the spread of their corruption. So if we look here, we get control -5. So we have less control in our province because we have maximum Skaven corruption. But we also have a reduction when under siege of 30% attrition, and we have an increase in income from all buildings. The other thing that isn't written here is that you get extra uses of the menace below as the corruption increases. So the more corruption you have, the more uses of the menace below that you're going to be able to use in battle by default without paying for them. You can, of course, pay for whatever it is that you want. Now, if you're interested in the Skaven military side of things, then I have a whole series on the army builds for the Skaven for you to check out, and I'll have those linked in the description box down below for your benefit if that's something that you want to dig into. I literally had to make, I think, 3 or 4 videos just to cover that topic because the Skaven have such a huge roster.